So in this video, I'm going to go through the homework answers. So for number 6, I said to use substitution. So the easiest variable to solve for, if we're going to substitute, would be x. So I'm going to say x equals, we're going to subtract 3y on both sides. So subtract 3y. And we get x equals 14 minus 3y. So then we're going to substitute this part into the x in the first equation. So we get 8 times 14 minus 3y plus 2y equals 2. And now we can solve this equation for y. So the first step is to distribute. 8 times 14 is 80 plus 32. 112. And then minus 8 times 3y is 24y. And then we still have this plus 2y, and that equals 2. So then we're going to combine like terms. Negative 24y plus 2y is negative 22y. And I'm going to subtract this 112 over to the other side. So 2 minus 112 is negative 110. And then we're going to divide both sides by a negative 22. Negative 22. So we get y equals negative divided by a negative is a positive, and 110 divided by 22 is 5. So y equals 5. Now we need to plug in 5 into either one of these equations. So, or this one that we solved for x. So I can say x equals 14 minus 3 times y, and I get x equals 14 minus 15. So x equals negative 1. The next problem, number 13, I said to use elimination, and that's because if you notice right here we have opposite signs and the same coefficient. So if we add these equations together, those are going to cancel out. So then we have to add 5x plus 2x is 7x, and negative 2 plus 9 is positive 7. So then we divide both sides by 7 and we get x equals 1. So now I plug in x equals 1 into either equation. So if I plug in 1 here, I just get 5 plus 7y equals negative 2. And then we can subtract 5 on both sides. And we get 7y equals negative 7. We divide by 7 on both sides, and we get y equals negative 1. Okay, next problem, number 15. You can either, if we're going to try to eliminate something, we want to get either the coefficients in front of x the same or the coefficients in front of y the same. And if you notice, if you multiply this equation by 2, you'll probably notice that we get 4x plus 6y equals 6. But that makes both coefficients the same. So if we take equation 1 minus equation 2, 4x minus 4x is 0. 6y minus 6y is 0. So we get 0 on the left side. And then 8 minus 6 is 2. And so we get this false statement, which means that there is no solution. And the sign for that looks like this. It's the empty set. Now, if that doesn't really make much sense to you, just think back to our inconsistent system. this means that the lines are parallel. That means they never cross. So if we actually take our equation 4x plus 6y equals 8 and solve for y, we would get 6y equals negative 4x plus 8. And then we divide both sides by 6, and we get negative 4 over 6 times x plus 8 over 6. And we really should reduce those, but I'm not going to for now. Because if we do the same thing with the other equation, even at the start, if we did the same thing, we'd have 2x, let's see, now we'd have 3y. If we subtract 2x on both sides, we get negative 2x plus 3. And now if we divide both sides by 3, we get negative 2/3 x plus 1. So now if you compare this equation to this equation, they have the same slope. Negative 4 over 6 is the same thing as negative 2/3. They have different y-intercepts, which means they're not the same line, but they will be parallel. And actually, if they're negative, then they should be going this way, like this. So that's why we say there's no solution. Algebraically, it will look like this, where your variables cancel out and you get a false statement. On the next problem, if we multiply this equation by 2, and it doesn't always have to be by 2, it just turns out that way for these problems, then this equation turns into 4x minus 10y equals 6. And so if we add these equations together, 4x plus negative 4x is 0. Negative 10y plus positive 10y is 0. So we get 0 on the left. But then we do 6 plus negative 6, and we also get 0. This is a true statement. So that means these are really the same exact line to begin with. If you graph both of these lines on Desmos or on a graphing calculator, you could see, or if we just graph them by hand, then you would see they are the exact same line. Negative 5y, if we subtract 2x on both sides, we get negative 2x plus 3. And then if we divide both sides by negative 5, we get y equals 2/5 x. And it's positive because we divided negative by a negative. And then 3 divided by negative 5 is negative 3/5. Okay, that's the first equation. The second one, if we add 4x to both sides, we get 4x plus 6, minus 6, and then we divide by 10. So we get y equals 4 over 10, but that's the same thing as 2 over 5. And then minus 6 over 10 is the same thing as minus 3 over 5. Those are the same numbers when you reduce them. So these are the same exact line. So we'd say there are infinitely many solutions because it's just the same line overlapping on top of itself. And remember, we would call that consistent and dependent. And we're going to come back to that on Monday. We're going to review those terms: consistent and dependent. Okay, the last one, probably the most challenging one in terms of the work you have to do, because since the coefficients don't have common factors, you can't just multiply one equation. You have to multiply both equations. So you have choices if you want to eliminate x or if you want to eliminate y. Most of you eliminated y, as it turns out, but you could also eliminate x. If you multiply this equation by 2 and this equation by 5, then we would get the same number for x. But if we want to eliminate y, then we would multiply this equation by 3 and this equation by 4. So then we would get 12y and 12y. So it's really up to you. I'm just going to leave it like this and multiply 15x plus 12y, and then 3 times negative 18 is negative 54. So then we do the same thing for the second one. 4 times 2x is 8x. 4 times 3y is 12y. And then 4 times negative 24 is negative 96. So now, in order to eliminate y, we would subtract these two equations together. So 15x minus 8x is 7x. 12y minus 12y is 0. But now be careful here. We have to do negative 54 minus negative 96, which means we're doing negative 54 minus a minus 96. So we have to add these together. Negative 54 plus 96 is 42. And then we divide both sides by 7 to get x equals 6. Okay, and then we plug that into any equation. It looks to me like this one is a little bit easier. So 2 times 6 is 12 plus 3y equals negative 24. Then I subtract 12 on both sides. We get negative 36. Divide by 3, we get negative 12. So remember, that means these two lines cross at this point. They have exactly one solution, which means they're consistent and independent.